here will encourage you that I am more organized than I usually am when I'm making my videos. We'll see how that goes. I am making another video of zucchini bread. I have a recipe from years back, but over the years I have perfected and or changed the recipes where I've made blueberry, cherry, and apple cakes. They started off as round cakes, and then they were mini cakes in square pans, and now I make them, I use the same batter, but I just make one and divide it in 12 for 40 calorie slices of blueberry or cherry or apple bread, cake, bread. I guess if it goes into a loaf, it's now bread, a loaf pan. So I want to use the same recipe I have for the blueberry and cherry cake with the zucchini. Yeah, so that recipe is, sorry, I was also making another cake, bread, whatever. So you have a 1/4 cup of loose dry oat bran. It's one of the few things I go into a health food store for, is loose oat bran. Then a little less than 1/3 cup of soy flour. It's 30 grams on the bag. It says 30 grams is a 1/4 cup, but this is 1/3 cup, so measure, and it's almost full. I weighed mine, but I'm using the measuring cups because some people don't like to weigh themselves or their flour. This is whole wheat flour. As you can maybe tell, it's about 1/2 cup. It is 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. It's also 66 grams of whole wheat flour. So it was whole wheat and soy flour and a little bit of oat bran. Now when I make my blueberry, cherry, and apple cakes, I put in a tablespoon of baking powder. But any recipe that has any recipe for zucchini bread or banana bread that I found says you're supposed to also use baking soda. And my understanding, and I think I've said this before, is that one of them is activated when the mixture is wet and cool, and the other is activated when it's heated, I think. So I'm going to use like about 1/2 tablespoon of baking soda. Well, tablespoon, teaspoon, whatever. Less baking soda than I use baking powder. I'm okay. I'm using a teaspoon. I'm gonna use any if I can't get it out. I'm using a teaspoon. Goodness. There we go. Teaspoon of baking powder. So those are my dry ingredients. I'm going to mix them up with a fork, and then I will get the wet ingredients ready. And you should know that the spices I'm going to use are cinnamon and nutmeg, and I'm going to use a splash of vanilla extract, like 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, so you mix your dry ingredients together and set them aside. You can use a sifter if you like. Then I'm going to use just a 1/4 cup of applesauce. I don't always add applesauce when I'm making the cakes. Like I use applesauce with the blueberries because for some reason they don't work out right, but I don't use applesauce with the cherries and they come out fine. So I'm erring on the side of caution, and I'm using a 1/4 cup of no sugar added applesauce, 1/8 cup, so here was the applesauce, 1/8 cup of egg whites, just because they didn't have the regular egg beaters that day, and 1/2 cup of almond milk. This is silk almond brand, vanilla flavored, 30 calories for a cup. I didn't just use the 1/2. And then I have about 1/3 cup of Splenda. Now, or it's not really Splenda, it's the bargain brand Splenda. Remember, you should not cook with aspartame, also known as NutraSweet, but you can bake with sucralose, also known as Splenda. But when you start doing cups full, half a cup, quarter cup, third of a cup, then it has calories. It's not a no calorie sweetener anymore. So I'm saying, well, it has a little less than 100 calories per cup, which is a lot less than real sugar. I think that's like 700. But like I said, I used about a third. No, woo, good catch. I used about a third. I'm going to go ahead right now and add a little drop of pure vanilla extract. Now I already shredded my zucchini. It was about one medium-sized zucchini, and because you don't want it to overwhelm the batter, your bread cake won't cook. This nifty shredder where the zucchini stayed in the bottom with just a little on my board, and it even tells me that I have just over a cup, maybe a cup and a quarter of shredded zucchini is what it turned out to be. I'm not going to put that in yet. I do have my oven baking. My oven's not baking. My oven is heating to 325. I want to cook it at a lower temperature longer so that it will get done inside. Okay, that's everything. So I'm just going to whisk these wet ingredients together. And I'm going to add the zucchini last. And if it's too dry, I will add some water. Just added about half of my dry ingredients that first time. And I don't have water handy. I'm going to have to leave you and get it. It doesn't matter, I don't think, when you put in your cinnamon and nutmeg. You could have mixed it with your dry ingredients. I'm just going to put it in at the end. Little drop of water there. You don't want it to be very wet, but you want to be able to move your whisk around in it pretty easily, so you don't want it running. Right? Mine might need more water now, but I'm going to add the zucchini because sometimes that will make it more moist, and I don't want to make a mistake because you can't take the water back out. Okay, is that everything? Let's see if I can get the bottom off of this thing. Pretty cool. Scrape off what's on the cutting board here. Don't think that's going to be too much zucchini. I think I'll add just a drop more water. So I used a half a cup of milk and not quite a half a cup of water. Now there's absolutely no reason not to use a whole cup of almond milk. I just get used to doing things a certain way, and I always use a half cup. So that's what I did. But if you used about 3/4 cups of moisture, I think you'll have it about right. Like I said, you don't want it to be too wet, it won't cook right. Okay, so some sprinkles of cinnamon and less sprinkles of nutmeg, just one. And I'm going to spray this pan. Ooh, it does have, I wonder if it has the measurements. It does. 8.5 by 4.5 by 2 3/4. Yours doesn't have to be just exactly like that. And you might even make these into mini muffins. I've done that before. Or into the 3 mini loaves. Or 2 half loaves. 2, yeah. 1, 2, 3, however many you want. I'm going for 1. It's easier, I found out. And like I said, I'm going to cut it into 12 when it's all done. I'm going to show you this. For my pan, make sure you get the bottoms in, the sides. You can use a spatula to scrape it out. And I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. minutes. It will need at least that much time at 325 in my oven. Make sure you get every last drop out of here. So this batter has about 490 calories. If you want to cook yours differently, just however you do, or however you slice it, whatever, that's your total calories, and you can do the math. Right? So I guess if you cut it in 10 instead of 12, it would have about 50 calories each. Okay, middle of the oven, 325, timer 30. And I'll let you know how it turns out. Meanwhile, I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make apple, I think. Sort of the same story, except I'm using cut apples that already have Splenda in them, so I don't have to add any. Don't need applesauce, but otherwise, it's pretty much the same. Okay. Hi. I had the timing off a little bit, and it's a nice golden brown now. I think it's good though. So I did bake it at 325 for 30 minutes, and then it was still very wet. So I notched up the temperature about to 350, baked it another 10 minutes, so 40. I didn't think it was done. Moved it back down to 325, and I think I cooked it all together about 45 minutes. So 325, 340, 350, somewhere around there would be the right temperature, and plan to cook it for longer than 30 minutes. I've just taken it out of the oven, and it's probably ready to flip, but I want to make sure it's not stuck on the sides. Sometimes they stick on the sides. So I'm in the habit of always doing this first. Feels a little moist, it feels a little sticky. But I was afraid to cook it any longer because it is this nice golden brown here. I'm wondering if I should let it set in the pan a little bit longer. That's why I am just standing here. Crack me up. Okay, well, we'll see what happens. If it doesn't come out of the pan nicely, that doesn't mean yours won't. It didn't. You know, you can hear it when it does. Yeah, it's in there pretty good. That bothers me because it's going to stick to the bottom, and it looks so beautiful. I think. Could be that it was too wet. It could be too much zucchini. It could be that I should have cooked it a little bit longer. So I think something is pulling it down, settle on the bottom so that it's very moist down there and doesn't want to let go. Oh, shoot. Yes. That's what happened, could happen to you. So I lost a little bit in the pan. I'm going to take my spatula and scoop it right up and try to place it back on. That happens sometimes, I'm sure. That has happened to you. It's still going to be wonderful. It looks great. These things happen. Okay. Smells really good. To prevent that, just make sure it's not too wet and that you cook it long enough. That's all I can think of. Bring the